Sports Radio 610, Houston Texans breaking news.
All right, if you missed it, previous segment came down, the news, Derek Stingley Jr. becomes the highest paid defensive back in the history of the NFL by, if we're going by average annual value, by a pretty tidy sum. He is signing a 3-year, $90 million contract, Derek Stingley is, with nearly all of it guaranteed. $89 million guaranteed, according to Adam Schefter. Here's the tweet. Record deal. Texans All-Pro cornerback Derek Stingley Jr. has agreed to a 3-year, $90 million extension, including $89 million guaranteed. A $30 million base value per year. In NFL history, the cornerback market has been completely reset. So the same thing that happened to the non-QB market with Myles Garrett a week ago, where he was getting $40 million a year and it jumped over Justin Jefferson. That's happening by even a bigger percentage in the cornerback market. Now, the highest paid corner before this news was J.C. Horn, and I think Derek Stingley Jr. is a significant bump above J.C. Horn. And Seth, I think that's what's reflected here, is at the top of the cornerback market had turned into one of those things where you got guys who are good players kind of jumping over each other by a little bit. And the fact of the matter is that Derek Stingley Jr. he's not $100,000 better than J.C. Horn. When healthy, he is way better than J.C. Horn.
Right, and I think that's the big question. And we wondered how would the health factor into this, in that Derek Stingley last year had his first fully healthy season, and he was an All-Pro. And he'd shown the ability to play at that level before. He just hadn't been able to stay on the field. So you can see from the Texans' perspective, they might be a little bit nervous about giving a guy a long extension if he hasn't had multiple healthy seasons. And this goes back to his college days as well. But it also is something that Caserio's been doing pretty consistently, starting with Laramie Tunsil and then with other guys like Nico Collins and other players. When he extends them, he's not going to give them a 4 or 5 year extension. It's a 3-year carrot on the stick. It allows you to plan more in the short term and keep cap space. You're not kicking a bunch of spending down the road. So I like it. I'm a fan of it. For NFL players who have been whining forever about not having guaranteed contracts, you can get a guaranteed contract. You just got to sign a shorter-term deal. Danielle Hunter did it last year.
Yeah.
Danielle Hunter's contract was almost completely guaranteed on a 2-year deal. Nick obviously did that deal as well. So I like it. I'm really excited for Derek Stingley. I think he's the classic kind of guy that will probably work out 2 extra hours today instead of planning a trip to Egypt or something. He's probably gonna feel that much hungrier to prove that he's worth the money. So
no doubt.
It's the right kind of guy to give an extension like this. He is not going to drop off and work one single bit.
Here's Derek Stingley Jr. on the Pivot podcast earlier this offseason. It's actually Super Bowl week in Louisiana, where Stingley is from, on him wanting to be a Texan for the rest of his career.
How important is it for you to get a deal done and remain a Houston Texan?
Well, I mean, I want to stay in Houston for the rest of my career, really. The deal going to happen when it happens. We still got to take care of business. I still got to work out, still got to be there. Nico Collins, when he was doing all that last year, every day I'm in there working out. I see him working out, so that's the standard that we got over there with the Texans. So that's what I'm gonna try to keep on doing.
All right, so that was Stingley. He wants to be here. It's back and look at the journey to arrive at this contract, where the night that Stingley was picked 3rd overall, that was, I don't want to say it was out of nowhere, but that was like, Stingley was like, if it was a horse race to see who the Texans were taking with that 3rd pick in the draft back in 2022, Stingley was like the horse coming up on the outside at the very end. Like, it was mildly surprising, I think, that Stingley ended up being the guy, only because, to your point, he had been injured for the last 2 years he was at LSU. Until this past season, he hadn't played a full season of good football since his freshman year in college, and I guess that might be something that, as I say those things, maybe makes this contract a little scary. I like to think that maybe, he figured some things out. His body stayed in, he played all 17 games last year. It's not for a lack of work that he had health issues. He's in the building there at NRG Stadium, according to Nick and others, every single day working out. He is a junkie when it comes to football and the things that go into being good at football. But I remember the night that he was drafted, and it was a little surprising it was Stingley, but I was cool with it. And I remember Nick in the war room that night, and there's video of this out there, him talking to Cal and Hannah and explaining the selection to them. And the one thing Nick said is, this is a guy that just doesn't grow on trees. He's unique.
Well, I think that when you watch Stingley play, compared to a guy like Sauce Gardner, who's he's got a very grabby brand of football that sometimes comes and goes with its effectiveness depending on how they used to officiate. That with Stingley, he's a pure cover cornerback. The way he operates, how comfortable he is, just moving in 19 different directions out of his back pedal. He does a lot of things really, really well, and then his ball tracking is what really puts him over the top. Yep. His ability to make plays on the ball like he's a receiver himself. A lot of times, especially if he's got a receiver figured out, he's running the receiver's route better than the receiver himself is. It's all those things where you just look at it, and when you watch him play, you say, oh, that's a true professional cornerback. And it's just a matter of keeping him healthy.
Yep.
The big thing is, in his ability to stay healthy, I think that all of those things that sometimes you hear younger players learning about how to recover, how to handle the week, just how much should you exert yourself versus overdoing it, all of that. Hopefully he's learned a lot of that over the first couple seasons, and that it wasn't just dumb luck that he was healthy this year.
Yeah.
But on the professionalism side of it and the work side of it, he is kind of like it will be with Will Anderson, I think. He's everything you want in terms of a guy who just lives, eats, and breathes football.
Yeah.
And the money's going to be really nice for him, but you've never gotten the sense that that's what's driving him. That more than anything, I think he just wants to be a great cornerback.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree, and I will go back to the detail I had pointed out a few minutes ago that last week, where he became clearly the highest paid non-quarterback in the sport at $40 million a year. Immediately articles coming out, an article in The Athletic coming out about maybe how he's been lacking some professionalism over the last couple years, late to meetings, not going to mandatory stuff like that. I listened in on Cleveland this morning, and Myles Garrett got asked about that at his press conference last Friday about this extension, and he next questioned the guy. And
really?
Yes, and he next questioned the guy, and the hosts on the Cleveland Morning Show, Ken Carman and Anthony Lima, in breaking down that audio, made a great point, which is nobody has come out on social media, Myles Garrett's teammates, and said it's not true. We see that all the time. No reporters, no teammates have come out and said that it's not true. And Jason Lloyd, who wrote the article, is clearly getting it from somebody who is probably still in the building with Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
I bring this up, not because we're not Cleveland radio, I get it, but Derek Stingley Jr.'s contract lives in the same neighborhood as Myles Garrett's contract. And you hear not a peep about nor from Derek Stingley Jr. about anything. This is a dream player. Other than the medicals, before last year, this is a dream player, and hopefully the medicals from 2024 are now the trend, not the exception.
Yeah, this is you know what? In terms of how do you approach the offseason, obviously this is going to create, I'm guessing, not any cap issues this year. Typically these are extensions that kick in a year down the road or so.
Create cap space.
So it might actually create a little bit of cap space this year. Yeah. I do, on the Caserio side of things, I really do like his practicality, I think, in the way he handles extensions and contracts like this. It's that you're exposing yourself to some risk because you're paying a boatload of money, but it's manageable in the short term. And for any player, not just Derek Stingley with his injury history, any player at all, if you get great play out of them over the course of 3 years, so whether it's Derek Stingley or Nico Collins or Danielle Hunter or anybody else, it's manageable, and you know what you're dealing with. It's the opposite of kicking the can down the road in the way that a lot of teams do, where they sometimes, like the Browns have been doing now, where they just keep kicking the can down the road, and it gets harder and harder to manage. If you've got a good quarterback and you're getting good play out of them, and if CJ can develop into that, that's the way to stay consistently competitive every year.
So the Texans nail down and get a deal nailed down with one of what I clearly they view as one of their tentpole cornerstone players here for this franchise.